Okay, so it's probably slightly different because I know bugger all about sales really. I'm married to someone who works in sales actually. But I suppose where I'm coming from is talking about content and content marketing and how it can really drive your business. So I'll jump straight into it. I work with Intercom. That's all the publicly released information out there about Intercom. But for the purposes of this presentation, I think the key thing about Intercom is that for the first 2.5 years of the company, there was actually no sales and marketing. Marketing was content. It was our blog. It was our founders going to events, networking at events, and it was a VIP program when people signed up that met a number of criteria, like they had a certain amount of funding, or we knew them to be influential. We made sure they had an excellent experience and that they, it was going to be good word of mouth. So it's really like content marketing. People talk a lot about content marketing now. You Google content marketing, you'll get gazillions of links. Everyone will tell you if you do these 5 things, it'll transform your content marketing. Bullshit. If you put in the hard work, it will absolutely transform your business. And I think we're the evidence of that. So I'm just going to run through what we've learned and what we do, etc., along the way. So what kind of content do we currently publish? This is, I suppose, quite different to what probably we were doing a year and a half ago when I joined. And just actually to be clear as well, I suppose content is now firmly part of the marketing team. We're actually part of demand generation, and we're very clear about what we're doing and where it fits into, I suppose, a more traditional marketing model. That's our blog, Inside Intercom. There's over 300 articles published on there. Now we get hundreds of thousands of page views every month, and we've got about 30,000 newsletter subscribers who get an email from us every week, telling them what's new on the blog, sharing links, telling them about the events we're talking about, all that kind of good stuff. This year we've started doing books. We've done 3 of them so far. I suppose I'd see them as being sort of further down the funnel in terms of, like, the blog is very much top of the funnel, and there's all sorts of people who read the blog who, if I'm totally honest, probably some of them don't even know what Intercom does or what the product is all about, but they have maybe a positive feeling towards Intercom that, down the line will turn into business. There's other people who are like customers and avid customers who read the blog, but in terms of the books, it's further down the funnel. We're grabbing email addresses when they sign up. We're doing nurturing campaigns with those people, and the like creating these books is a big challenge, but it's they turn into really good leads and really good conversion rate on them. And the latest thing we're doing is a podcast, because podcasts are cool. No, we're doing a podcast. I think it's an interesting area. It's like we've seen people like Slack doing it at the moment. We're kind of experimenting it, seeing where it would go, and we're trying to do, I suppose, like we do with a lot of our content, trying to come up with our own sort of take on it. So it's not like 2 bro programmers sitting around going, "Hey, dude, what do you think about X, Y, and Z?" It's like they're relatively short interviews with people who we respect in the industry and we think have got something interesting to say. So that's all what we do. Why do we do it? Of course, it's lovely. We get lots of social media mentions. We get people like Tim O'Reilly, the legendary industry figure, tweeting about us. Mike Davidson from VP of Design at Twitter. Literally, every day there's just loads of kudos for our content. But also traffic, page views is up and to the right, constantly growing. But we're not selling ads. So, I mean, page views are really only important if you're selling ads. Otherwise, they're just something that costs you money because you're going to have to pay to host somewhere. The reason we actually do this is because people who visit our marketing pages, our landing pages for our different products, etc., first, and then come to our blog or engage with our other content, are 4 times more likely to become a paying customer than if they just went straight to the marketing pages. So very much by coming to the marketing pages, they go, okay, I'm kind of interested in Intercom, I know what the products roughly do, I want to find out more about these guys and what they're doing. So they come and they read in the blog. And guess what? If you read about how to do customer support on our blog, or tips for customer support, or whatever it might be that we've published, when you use our products, you're not suddenly going to go, what the hell is this thing? It's very much the content we try to embody, I suppose, the philosophy that's also in the product. So it's I think that's the why for me anyway of why that happens. And of course, the really good reason, and the reason I have a job and I'm here talking to you, is because people who visit the blog have a much higher spend with us, much more engaged, much longer time customers than people who don't. So that's the good news. What have we learned along the way? Key thing I think is that any kind of content market, any kind of blogging, really has to be led from the top. Particularly, I think in the early stages. I think most of you are in a relatively early stage. Des largely carried the blog for the first 2.5 years. Des Traynor, our co-founder, he literally made sure that there was like something new on it at least once a week, so that we had a newsletter to go out to to subscribers. He sourced guest bloggers, etc., etc. And I think what that means is, though, that the benefit of blogging is clear at Intercom. No one's kind of going, why would I do that? Because it's like, well, the CEO does it, the chief strategy officer does it, all the functional leads do it. No one looks at it as something like, oh, I'll do that at the weekend, or it's a bit of a pain. Recently we announced our Series C. Owen, our CEO, is a designer. Some of you, I think, know him. Owen's attention to detail is pretty legendary, and also his, Owen would never have gone, hey, today Intercom are delighted to announce we've raised 35 million Series C from X, Y, and Z. I mean, that would just be anathema to him. So 3 days before we were due to announce, and I'm kind of going, have we got a blog post to announce this or anything? He's like, we're doing a cartoon. I was like, really? And have we got this cartoon? Oh no, it'll be ready on time. But sure enough, it was. We did a story. Actually, it goes back to like the whole history of communications. It goes back to cavemen. Why it's such a janky experience communicating with your customers on the web. And sure enough, we had as much sort of kudos for the way we announced our Series C as the fact of getting a Series C. The other thing I've learned as we've gone through this is that actually, content for your company is just like doing any publication. I worked for 20 years for people like, I started editing a PC magazine way back when, and worked for the Irish Times for 10 years. And, like people think they're always looking for silver bullets, and like this kind of idea of, oh, if we just add, a couple of people, we can just churn up the content. Sure, you do need to invest in people, but actually having editorial values, having like sort of standards for what are you going to write about, what makes a good article for you, etc., is really key. The other thing I think we found along the way is that people say scaling is hard, and that's because it is. This time last year, we pretty much had me and one other person working kind of half her duties were working with me on content. Now we have a team of 4, and like that's literally in the last couple of months that's kind of scaled up. If you are serious about doing content, I would say sort of document your processes, do all the boring stuff, like the stuff that you're probably going, oh yeah, we'll get to that eventually. Do it now. It's like any other function in your company. Do it now. Make your decisions about like how you want things to look like in a year's time or whatever. This is the content team now. As I say, I'm there. We have a 2 content marketing managers in San Francisco, and Jeffrey, who works with me in Dublin as content editor. And that's a pretty serious investment. So, like we've done pretty well with content so far, but I think we're planning to go even further in the new year. As I mentioned already, everybody's looking for a silver bullet. If you go online, you'll see like all these quick win techniques and stuff about content marketing. It's a real sort of quick win sector at the moment. It's just one of those kind of hot areas that people think, oh yeah, you can do it real easy. The key to doing good content is investing in content. Like all these articles are all about the marketing bit, but very little actually written about the content bit. And if you don't create the content, people won't come. I'll get to a bit more of that in the second half. For us as well, lots of things end up on the cutting room floor. I think if you're serious about content, you've got to, not everything's going to work out. It's one of the few areas where I see people kind of go, oh, well, we've invested a lot of time in that, we better put it out. Like if you're developing your product, you don't, if you realize it's a stinker, you just don't release it. You don't put it out in the hands of your customers. Yet people kind of feel when they've invested in content, they almost grow attached to it, I think. And as a result, it's kind of like they put out stuff that really shouldn't be there. We regularly, not regularly, but we have in the past sort of just said, you know what, this isn't good enough, or we just need to go back and start at scratch. And it goes back to that kind of stuff I was talking about, like sort of having editorial standards, having those kind of standards of like, well, how do we judge this? You know, how are we going to know, like, what is a good article for us? Even if it's just as simple as like, you know, we're not big on personas at Intercom, but like, who are you writing for? Who would be interested in it? Like, ask yourself, if you're going to publish an article or a blog post or whatever it might be, like, say, who would read this? And like, at the end of it, like, what change are you going to have sort of, you know, what change behavior are they going to do as a result of it? Another thing, I think, you know, you really have to just create the time and space to write. One of the key things people always say to us is, where do you find the time to write all this stuff? And it's like, well, where do we find the time to design the product? Where do we find the time to, you know, code the product? I mean, it's the exact same stuff. If you're serious about content marketing and what it can do for your startup, I think you just got to say, right, we're gonna make time. Yeah, there is absolutely a tendency to sort of say, oh, I'll write that article at the weekend, or you know, whenever it might be, and you know, that's fine. But I think it shouldn't always be seen as something that you just kind of do as an add-on, you know, because again, I think it comes from the top. I think of you as like founders or early employees, if you're kind of constantly saying, oh, this is something I do in my spare time, well then, you know, everyone else on the team is going to say, oh, well, that's something I should be doing in my spare time. And as a result, I don't think you'll ever get that kind of transformative effect. There's another thing we've found very much, like we kind of define our blog as sort of being for people who are interested in how to build a startup. And that's quite a broad definition. And as a result, there's quite a broad canvas of what we talk about. We've done stuff on time management. We've done stuff on like what kind of metrics you need for fundraising. And, you know, not in a very sort of, oh, let's give something back to the community kind of way, but more just in a kind of a, I'm trying to sound too pretentious, but like, you know, scientists and doctors and people are always like sharing information in the sense of trying to make their profession better. And I think like a lot of people in our place would feel like, let's share how we do, you know, solve a design problem, or share how we approach, even as I say, something simple like time management, etc. How we approach fundraising. Just because I think it's good to share. It's better that like, you know, people do this. People do this in a better way than people constantly trying to sort of learn it for themselves. The one thing I would caution about content is it's a very slow return. You know, we've all seen that where companies launch a blog or some kind of other content project and it's all gung-ho and they're publishing every week for the first like 5-6 weeks. And then it's like every second week. And then 6 months in, it's like, oh, they haven't published anything for 2 years. Like, you really have to be prepared to put in the work on content. It doesn't pay off this quarter. It won't even pay off next quarter. It'll probably be like 3-4 quarters before you really see the benefit of it. And that's hard because you know, you've got those sort of moments where you're going, I could be doing something that's going to like pay off next week. It's going to have an impact. But the good news is, unlike any other type of marketing, content marketing has a compound return. And particularly if you have what we do, which is called an Evergreen Strategy. So what we do is we're pretty, we're a little bit extreme in our Evergreen Strategy. Evergreen basically means you're trying to write content that will have a long life. We kind of go to the extreme with that in the sense that we don't put dates on our articles. Every so often people go, why don't you have dates in your articles? I want to know when this is written. And it's like, well, if we had like SaaS metrics for fundraising, really popular article that our director of finance wrote a while back, I can guarantee you, if we had dates on that article, people, particularly people I think in San Francisco and you know a lot of the hotter startup places around the world, would look at it and go, that's a month old. Clearly, there's like things have changed since then. You know, or certainly if it's 6 months old, they'd be like, oh well, I'm not reading that. Whereas actually with no dates on it, we have articles that like have been written literally 2-3 years ago that are still getting like hundreds of page views today. So That's what an evergreen strategy is, and this is kind of what it looks like in terms of your traffic. This is actually from a guy called Thomas Tungas. He's a venture capitalist with Redpoint. He writes about a lot of different stuff. I think he used to be a product manager at Google, but very interesting. He writes a lot about content actually, and content marketing and how content marketing works. And he actually ran the numbers on this. So the idea is, if you have an evergreen article, and if you have, say, a news-based article, you know, and it's like write about the Apple Watch or whatever's trendy or whatever's, you know, if something's going to be released, Apple are going to have a new product out, and you go, how is this going to affect the hairdressing industry or whoever you're selling to? You know, you will get a big spike in traffic if you do it properly. You get, like, you know, maybe 200 page views, day 1. Day 2, 10 page views. Day 3, 1. You know, it literally, its half-life is really, really short. I totally saw this in the newspaper industry. I guarantee you, like, no matter how popular a newspaper article is, a year after it's published, if it's getting 1 or 2 page views, it's a miracle. So you get this very spiky traffic when you try and do news or topical stuff. But actually with evergreen stuff, it's like it gets 100 page views day 1, probably get like maybe 80 day 2, falls off much more quickly. But in a year's time, it's getting 10, 15. If you're really lucky, as I say, we have some that are still getting hundreds of page views. And so as a result, you're sort of building up constantly. So that's what I'm saying about it. You know, it takes time, but actually, if you come up with the right strategy and the right sort of editorial policy, you'll get compound returns. And as I mentioned, we've seen the proof of that in terms of articles that are still paying off years later. White Cards of the Future of the Web, written by Paul Adams. Paul Adams is our VP of Product. And Paul wrote this, I think it's like September 2013. And Paul hadn't been in the company that long. It was a big hire for us. He'd come from Facebook. He'd worked in Google previously. Like, he has a patent on Google Circles actually in Google Plus. So like, real heavy hitter, an amazing guy for us to get. So like, you hire someone like that, hey, let's have him spend 2 days write this article. You go, that's fucking crazy. What are you doing? But well, probably about a day, 2 days max. But that article will still regularly be in our top 5 most read articles, and it's just a huge driver of traffic. Invariably, someone will. There's another one he's written, The Dribbleization of Design, which is talking about how Dribbble, the sort of portfolio site, has impacted the quality of designers that he was seeing. Someone will pick it up on Reddit or something at the weekend, and there you go, 200-300 page views. Engagement and conversion isn't as great on those kind of articles, but they're just great at sort of like exposing and growing the audience and getting people to visit us. So enough about me, as I say. How can you get some of this content goodness? First off, just something I see constantly. I had a look actually at I had a look at the list of companies here, and had a look at some of the blogs, and there's a couple that definitely fall into this sort of trap, which is, it's all about you. The blog is like, our company has done X, our company is going to be at Y, we've been given Z award, and it's like, that is fantastic for you and for your CEO, your founder, or even, in fact, you may be the CEO and founder, but you know what, your readers and your potential customers do not give a shit about that kind of stuff. I mean, that's fine, have that stuff like somewhere in terms of like company updates, but if you're talking about real content, people don't want to know about, like, you know, what you're trying to sell them. They want to engage. They want to be educated. They want to learn something. They want to, like as we were saying, it's our blog is very much aimed at people who want to learn about growing software companies, how to build a growing software company. And so if we can give them an article that even helps them do something like 5 minutes quicker, 2 minutes quicker, 30 seconds quicker in their day, like a good tip. Something like that, it's like bingo, they'll come. If they can give them an article that really sort of gets them thinking about like where the industry is going, or where, you know, design patterns or something like that, so much the better. Something that's been hugely successful for us, as I touched on this already, it's just that, like, sharing what you've learned. So this is a post Paul did earlier this year, which literally goes like from idea to product. How do we actually, like, we've got ideas, how does that end up in the product as a feature? And literally went through how we track them, what the inputs are, all that kind of stuff, like what Trello boards we use, like pictures of whiteboards, the whole shebang. And I think one of the guys was saying actually as we were getting ready to put it out, Jesus, I wish that had been around like 3 years ago when we were starting Intercom. And guess what? By being that, like you can sort of say, oh well, you know, why are we, you know, our competitors could potentially use it or whatever. I mean, our view of this kind of stuff is, you know, be open and share stuff, because at the end of the day, it's all about execution. You guys all know that. Like, good ideas are 2 a penny. It's like, how the hell are you going to get that good idea to market, etc. So, I think don't be afraid to share things you've learned. Don't be afraid to have an opinion. See so many company publishing efforts, and they're just, it's bland. You know, they literally do not have an opinion on anything. It's all, you know, maybes and kind ofs, and you know, again, it kind of goes back to like I think in the startup world, obviously with the influence of Silicon Valley, but there's that whole kind of valley language where people talk in this. It's kind of like this. It's like, is it like that or isn't it? Because there's no kind of, you know. But actually, that kind of there you go. I'm doing it myself. That seeps through into, you see it an awful lot in content, and as a result, it's kind of wishy-washy, and it's not going to be very engaging. What are you an expert on? I mean, you must be an expert if you've got a startup. You know, there's an area you've identified. You know, if you're not an expert now, you're fast becoming an expert. Your customers are educating you. And what opportunities is there in, you know, in terms of content around that? I don't know if people know Moz, Rand Fishkin, he's the co-founder of Moz. They're like a search SEO kind of type firm. They have a bunch of other products now, but they do this thing called Whiteboard Friday. Now, Rand, as you can see, I probably should have included a video actually of him, but as you can see there, he's a bit of a dude. He has a bit of a large personality, but he does this thing where he literally stands in front of a whiteboard, which he's already written out something on, goes through it on video every Friday, and it's just an absolute huge. Sorry about that. It's just a hugely popular thing. It's like so associated with them. It's like, it's kind of their brand personified. They do a bunch of other content stuff, but it's just like hugely successful for them. I suppose, like as I say, the similar way we do that is we look at, like, you know, outside of the areas where Intercom actually has a product, or, you know, but just that we have in-house speciality. And this is that post I talked about earlier, which Bobby, our Director of Finance, did, which is SaaS metrics for fundraising. Obviously, we've raised a fair bit of money. We've fair bit to share there, so it's like a good thing for us to write about. I don't know if people remember this New Yorker cartoon from Internet 1.0. Definitely 1 or 2 people around here should. But you know, it was the whole thing about no one knows your dog on the internet. But thanks to Facebook, Google, Twitter, whatever, not only do people know you're a dog, but they know what kennel you come from, they know who your parents are. You know, like, you can't get away with being, you know, just can't get away with spoofing it. You know, I think you really have to, like, if you're doing content, write about, like, not only what you're an expert on, what you're passionate about, what you're interested in, and, you know, again, as I say, if you're doing a startup, presumably you are passionate and interested in it. Another thing I constantly hear, particularly from, say, like engineers or designers or people who are like quite expert in their field, is, you know, they might give a presentation or whatever internally, and you say, oh, that would make a great blog post, and they're like, oh, but so and so blogged about that 6 months ago, and I'm like, okay, so some slightly obscure design blog post, you know, 6 months ago came out about it. Like, it's like, no, not everyone does know that. Let's just put it out there. I mean, if newspapers were going to adopt that attitude of, oh, if that article has been done, there would be a lot of blank paper being published every day. So, you know, you constantly have to sort of think about, like, you know, content you may already have and how it could be repurposed. So, for instance, one of our customer support engineers literally just did an internal presentation about how we should be tracking bugs and how we should be reporting bugs and what's helpful for the product teams to actually fix bugs. And it's just like, hey, let's just make this applicable, more broadly applicable. Not make it about, like, necessarily just our process, but just like how anyone can report and track bugs and improve their product. And sure enough, like didn't take a huge amount of work in the sense of a lot of it was there already, and it's generated lots of traffic for us. This is a line from Des, but it kind of goes back. I touched on this already. You know, like that bug tracking article, anything that's just like a simple idea or explanation of something that helps people do their job better will get traffic literally from the time it goes online to the time it goes offline. There's just no doubt about that. The other thing I think I'd say is, like, people say they're doing thought leadership, which generally just kind of means you know, stream of consciousness kind of stuff quite often, and try to be a little bit provocative, which is great. But you know, I think thought leadership, you know, make sure it's like always try and ground it in reality a bit, I think, but also, yeah, you know, by all means be provocative, but not for the sake of it. But I think if you're doing thought leadership and everyone agrees, there's something wrong. So like this is another one Paul did about the future of apps, and there was 123 comments, and I'd say about 120 of them were like why he was wrong and why these people knew better, and the other 3 I think were probably trying to promote their own products. Again, going back to don't be afraid to have an attitude and an opinion. We have a growth team that's quite different, I suppose. Well, quite different to most growth teams I'm aware of, where they're actually sort of like responsible for any part of the product that's involved in onboarding or pricing, anything that's going to sort of like help move the needle in terms of Intercom's revenues. And so Ben, who heads up that team, is like just got a thing about growth hacking, sort of like people going, that whole thing of, we changed the shade of blue on the button and we increased conversions by 1%. So if we just have 80 different shades of blue, you know, that kind of thinking of like that everything is hackable. So he has a thing now, he wrote this post a while ago, and it's now become, he's done a few talks and stuff on it. But it winds up people something rotten, but you know, they talk about it, they come to our site, they engage about it, and they're just more aware of Intercom.
John,
yep.
what role do you play on all these blogs?
They would, well, it depends on the so we would have an editorial calendar, just like, as like in a newspaper publication. So I'm basically the editor. So some people can't write very well, they need help. Some people are excellent writers and, you know, don't want to help. So like it's literally things like sourcing images, thinking about how it's going to look, thinking about how we're going to promote it, all that kind of stuff, all the stuff that goes around it. And then I suppose like my role also would be things like, so for instance, like when we have books, we have podcasts, thinking about like that long tail of content. So, all right, here's Ben has this like blog post. What else can we do with that? We kind of try and do, like there's again a whole thing of, if you go online and look at sort of like content marketing websites, they'll have this kind of whole matrix of, well, if you write one book, say for instance, you can get like 10 blog posts out of that. Each blog post then have like 3 social media posts, you know, like there's this like matrix of, and suddenly it's like you've written a book and it's like this huge mass of content that's literally going to keep going for the year. But you know, I think that there's some merit to that, but it's like basically you're basically flogging a dead horse by the end of it. So what we do things like that in terms of, we have, say for instance, Des wrote a post called Product Strategy. Product Strategy is about saying no. And talking about all the times as a product manager, you need to say no to your customers. You need to say no to your CEO, whoever it might be, or, you know, say no even though the data says it. And we actually created a site saying product strategy. Product strategy means saying no, a microsite, and kind of did it animated with a bunch of our brand. We have these animals now that are on all our new branded pages, and yeah, so that was just like another way to sort of use the content we initially had. Generate a huge amount of traffic. Like in October, it was like the biggest driver of traffic for us. So yeah, so in some cases, like people like, let's say Ben or Paul Adams, people like that, there's not a lot of, like they have ideas, you tell them it's a good idea or a bad idea, and you get delivered content. But it's taken a while to get to that stage. Another thing actually, just while I think of it, images, we've invested quite a lot of work on our blog in terms of just making it look good. I thought this was a really good quote, and certainly resonated with me, like no matter what kind of content I've been doing down through the years, but like images or pictures on an article are like the last thing people think of. Like people write an article and go, oh, picture. Yet, if you think about it the other way, as a reader, you go to a website, what's the first thing you see? The pictures. You scan through the pictures. So we've tried to very much have a sort of visual identity and try and like avoid the stock images and the, you know, we've all seen them, so, and do something, you know, we actually have a designer who probably spends 10-15% of his time actually generating images for the blog. But just do things that like actually illustrate the point very well. So this was a post about don't start with a cupcake. The idea being that if you're building a cake, you don't actually sort of like create the individual elements and then finally put them together on your wedding day, only to discover, you know, pistachio icing doesn't work with, you know, pumpkin cake or whatever. But that actually, if you want to make a wedding cake, you start off with a cupcake and then you make a normal cake and then you make a wedding cake. But you know, just very simply illustrated, and like we've actually been able to use that as a social media post on its own. It's like, you know, obviously in presentations like mine, etc., etc. But they're just like images are a really, really great way to communicate with your readers. They can be processed fast, and they also get much more views than text-only stuff. Here's an example of like what we could have done. We had this post about time for sales to call a truce with customers, which I recommend you read. Actually, it's quite interesting about SaaS sales from our VP of sales. So rather than the you know, call a truce, the customer and the businessman shaking hands, we actually looked at, like, create a simple image just showing like the kind of the older tactics versus the newer SaaS sales tactics. And then just finally, I would say, unfortunately, the bad news is the only way to get better at writing is to write. It's a muscle that needs to be exercised. If you're serious about creating content, that in turn can drive content marketing. You really just have to write, sit down, spend time, and make mistakes. People always say they're writing, but actually they're researching, which is, you know, as we used to say, surfing the web. They're tweeting, or, you know, again, oh, I'm researching. Or they're doing analysis, you know, they're like, suddenly they've got like 3 Google Analytics tabs open and you're saying, oh, what are you doing? Oh, I'm writing. It's like, no, writing is writing. And people say they don't have time, but as we have written, being busy is lazy. You know, prioritize this the same way you prioritize anything else. And it's not rocket science. Happy to take any questions. It was probably a bit of a whistle-stop tour.
Started out for the first 2.5 years,
Mm-hmm.
and super smart guy, tons of experience in product, UX, startups over years. So when you're building out the content team, you can't very well go out and hire lots of mini devs. How did you approach that?
How much do you want to say on camera? How do you approach that? Oh, well, it's a tough one actually, because so as I said, my background was I worked in I was a tech journalist, so I got tech, and I'd known the guys for a while. But even for me, it was a big transition. I mean, the way I always look at it is the people in Intercom, and I think in any company, are the subject matter experts. So people like me come along, and we're just like, it's our job to facilitate those people. It's our job to maximize the impact of what they're doing, to help them get those ideas out where needed, to help them promote those ideas, etc. So I suppose you need to find someone who has some kind of appreciation of tech and software. Like, we advertised for a role in Dublin over the summer, and it's no secret that the newspaper and journalism generally is not in the brightest, happiest place in its history. So like tons of journalists applying, but like absolutely no sort of software technology experience. Like, even asking people, what's your favorite app on your phone? And it was like, just to see, like, even do they have some kind of passion about it? And actually it was pretty stunning, actually, the lack of it. So we've actually, well, who we hired, it came from a UX consultancy. I don't know, I mean, you get a feel for someone, just like, do they get it? You know, the other problem as well is, like, startups are sexy at the moment. Like, people want to work in a startup because they're like, oh, it's cool, it's like Silicon Valley on the TV, and as we all know, it is in its rear end, but you know, it's hard, and it's, you know, it's long hours sometimes, and it's, you know, you wonder you're heading in the right direction. But yeah, I mean, one thing I would say is there are a lot of talented editors and journalists out there who are underemployed. And I certainly would say, looking back on Intercom, like the guys probably could have, tried. I think they did try looked around at the time, just never found anyone suitable. But like, you can certainly get freelance people come in and do a lot of that stuff early on without having to make a hire. Just do editing, and it's a good way of seeing if they're a good fit.
Is there anything you did at the start that you wouldn't do now in terms of how you generate content, like the topics or the people you choose to write it, and measuring that effect? Then you said it's a long tail effect. Was there any metrics you may have been focused on at the start that you were like, we shouldn't just be looking at this, it's leading us down the wrong path?
So I mean, I suppose I talk very much about you want to create something that obviously interests your readers, and they're going to want to come and find out more about it. So that's really at the like generating credibility stage. I mean, we're at the stage now where we are like, we do have a matrix, and we say, like, we're quite lucky at Intercom. Like we've 4 products. So there's like support, product management, marketing. So there's a bunch of areas we can basically write about. So we're quite careful to make sure that we're like ticking those boxes every quarter, that we have sales content for our acquire product, we have marketing content for our engage products, etc. That will attract the right kind of people. So we're not doing this in a sort of a very stroke my beard kind of way. But like, I suppose we're a design-led company. And the one thing I would say is like we kind of have a reputation now as like for writing quite strong articles on design. But they get very low, like in terms of converting those readers into people who actually sign up and use the product, very low. Because actually a designer is not the kind of person who buys Intercom. They don't specify it. So some way you could say maybe that would be something we invested a fair bit of time in. Has it generated business? I don't know. But it certainly helped blow up the brand and blow up the name out there.
You can say one designer bought Intercom.
Yeah, okay, there you go. But generally as a group, I mean, like the products are not like, and like you'll get designer-led startups and stuff as well, so that got me wrong. In terms of metrics, yeah, I mean, like page views are important, but like they are kind of a yardstick for popularity or whether you're hitting the right note with people, But at the end of the day, it's like emails signed up for a trial of the product, and that would be what we look at. And so certain content we do, it's just like it'll be off the charts in terms of that. So things like the books, the actual conversion rates for them compared to like an average blog post is massive. So that's what I'd say. Just look at what's moving the needle in terms of your actual business, not the vanity metrics.
Have you looked at the tracking between hires and blogs now? So in terms of the design-led stuff,
yeah.
they're not thinking about Intercom because the people you want to hire.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, that's the whole, I suppose, thing about content, and is it just a demand generation activity? No, actually, the design stuff has been very successful in that regard. I suppose thinking mostly here in terms of the demand gen side, but actually one of our designers moved here from Latvia after he read one of the blog posts. He got in touch with the guys and said, I really want to like work for a company that has that attitude to design and designers. And he's like now one of our senior designers, been with us for a couple of years. I was actually taken aback when I joined Intercom how many people who said they kind of wanted to work at Intercom because of the blog. So that can be really powerful. Like you also wonder, I don't know, I mean, play devil advocate a little bit, but there's a lot more good content out there from companies now. Like, would it be as easy to break through the noise? Probably is though, if you come up with like, an idea of what you want to write and what you want to talk about. Any more questions? Anyone want to ask me any questions off camera?
How closely do you work with sales in terms of would they be kind of pushing content ideas on you and telling you what works?
We'd work with sales in the sense of, so I suppose on a number of levels. We did do customer stories for a while on the blog. Didn't prove, just wasn't that much interest, even though we tried to do them in a way that we thought was like, tried to be as authentic as possible, that they weren't these kind of like white paper type case studies. But it just, in many ways, I actually thought potentially they were kind of like counteracting the other stuff we were doing, because people see it as kind of, you know, you read a company publishing a story about its own customers. So we actually moved all the customers' case studies and customer stories are on their own page now, separate to the blog. That's obviously a huge thing for the salespeople just to use in terms of helping sell Intercom. And then the sales team themselves would generate content, like our Acquire product, which is basically allows you to communicate with visitors to your website before they become customers, and hopefully, you know, turn them into customers. We create sales, you know, we talk about sales and how sales is changing and how the job is changing, etc. And so our sales team would actually work on that. But in terms of so they would certainly, like, we'd have regular communication with them and hope that, you know, if there's things out there that customers and potential customers are interested in, or if there's like blockers that we can help with, we definitely would have those conversations. But it's not, you know, they wouldn't be sort of saying, they wouldn't be demanding certain things very often. You know, it would be rare enough that they'd say, "Oh, it would be really helpful if we had something like that, a particular piece of content."
Content that's geographic specific.
No, very much like our audience is global. We have customers in 88 countries.
Would you write content in American, English, or?
Well, actually, that's an interesting one. We write everything in American English. Why? Because Americans will say that's wrong if they see something in English, whereas Irish and English people will look at it and go, "Oh, that's American English." So, you know, why spend your time constantly? And I worked in web consultancy back in Web 1.0, and that was like something we learned back then, and I've just always stuck with it because it makes life easier, you know. But like, no, all our content, like, so up to now, anyway, all our content is, we don't have anything that we'd like sort of push out, like, to readers who come in from the States versus readers come in from Europe or anything. That may well change down the line.
Do you do anything different for foreign languages, so French, German, Spanish, whatever? Is it all
Not in terms of that kind of content. In terms of our marketing pages, yeah, we do. We have localized marketing pages. I think the thing though with that kind of stuff is you just need to be sure you can then support it. Like, what's the point in having a Taiwanese landing page and you don't have anyone who can speak Taiwanese on your team? You know, like, how are you going to service customers you get? So we have a few now. That's something we've done in the last 6 or 8 months. But in terms of the actual content itself, no, it's not a road we've gone down. Like, occasionally we get requests from people to republish articles in their country. Like, there's a Tunisian guy who's like republished some of our stuff. There's a bunch of people in China who've asked for permission, which kind of, and Russia as well. But like, it's very much on an ad hoc basis. We don't do it actively.
With your blog using like the outbound sales side of it, like as in the initial email, getting in touch from blah blah blah, do you have a direct?
Do we track it?
Blog, or
sorry?
Would you push the blog in a sort of introductory email, or would you?
Not hugely. Like, a lot of people contact when they have a conversation with sales. It turns out they learned about us through the blog. And when we go to trade shows and stuff like that, again, there'll be a lot of feedback on the blog and the content. And the key thing is then just making sure, like, that people who engage with the content are aware of what Intercom do, but doing that in a way that, you know, as I said, is not in your face and kind of like constantly talking about us. So in fact, we're probably a little bit conservative about that kind of stuff. We probably could be more pushy. So we're still sort of, it's very hard to come back from that once someone reads something and then suddenly they arrive and it's like all these pop-ups saying, "Hey, buy our products," and, you know, like, it's very hard to pull back from that.
I mean, even the opposite of that. So like, when you've someone doing outbound sales in a company and they're getting in touch with a potential client or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And then maybe in the signature or.
Yeah, no, and even they'd actually, we've created collections of articles for the salespeople. So it's like, hey, you know, if you're talking to customers, you sell them this product, these articles might be helpful if you're selling this product. Or, you know, here's some sector-specific articles that might be useful. So yeah, no, absolutely, salespeople use content as a tool. Like, they're constantly sharing our articles.
Have you seen this?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So if we publish something new, they'll be aware of it, and we'll share it with the relevant customers or leads. Cool. Thank you very much. If that's everything, I'll hang around for a little bit anyway if there's any more questions. Thanks.